Regardless of how you feel about this film when you leave the theater, whether you loved it or hated it, can we all at least agree that Neon had an absolutely phenomenal marketing campaign when it comes to this film? From the trailers to the teasers to all of the cryptic letters, all of the stuff they've been posting online to build suspense and hype for this film, like, can we please have more movies following these footsteps so they don't reveal the entire plot, all of the good scenes in the trailer, please? And because this movie was so cryptic, I feel the need to address a couple of things before I even get into my review. The first thing being, I'm going to be incredibly vague about the way I describe this film because, as I always say, this is one of those films that's best experienced if you don't know anything about it going into it. The second thing being that I feel the need to address the conversation and some of the marketing surrounding this film if maybe you haven't seen it yet. You know, there's a lot of conversation about this thing. Scariest movie since Silence of the Lambs. Scariest movie of the decade. Now, do I like this film, generally speaking? Yeah. You know, do I think it has a lot of brilliant components as a thriller? Yeah. One of the scariest movies of the decade. Scarier than Silence of the Lambs. Fuck no. For the most part, I did enjoy this film. I thought it flowed, had a unique story, but I need to address that narrative that it's like the scariest movie of the decade. I think there's going to be a lot of people who go into this one and they're going to feel a little bit duped based on the trailer and that narrative of how scary it is. It's really not. Because I think this film works a lot better as a crime thriller than when it goes full horror. Longlegs was directed by Oz Perkins, who is actually the son of Anthony Perkins, who played Norman Bates in the original Psycho, so that's a little fun fact for you. Not to give anything away and to be as generic and vague as possible in describing this, but what Longlegs is about, it follows FBI agent Lee Harker, played by Micah Monroe, and she's following this serial killer named Longlegs, who's played by Nicolas Cage. She's investigating these serial murders in which the only commonality between them dating back 30 years is entire families are being killed, and these very cryptic notes, almost riddles with this weird alphabet, are being left behind by this guy named Longlegs. Obviously, as the film goes along, the story is going to get a lot more fleshed out than that vague description, but we're going to learn about the main lead, Lee, her past, the serial killer Longlegs, what his motives are, why he's doing this, spanning 30 years. But to its core, I do definitely think this is a crime thriller similar to Silence of the Lambs or Seven. It is tonally different from the first and second act, but that's where I think the vast majority of the good stuff takes place. The thing that really stood out to me about this film was actually the way it was filmed by the director Oz Perkins. And if you're familiar with any of his work, you know, Gretel and Hansel, the Blackcoat's daughter, he has a very, very unique filming style, and it's very prominent in this movie. Now, I was totally on board with this film from the opening scene, which I actually think was a pretty phenomenal scene, and it highlights the way he frames shots. You know, it's filmed in a very narrow screen and it takes place in the winter. It has this girl going up to meet someone. Somebody calls out to her. It's very creepy and eerie. You're introduced to one of the main characters in this film and it has a very good jump scare. It's very subtle. I absolutely love the opening scene of this film and I think it sets the tone for this film pretty well. What he chooses to do is he takes these very simple scenes in which not too much is going on. You have like one person who's working on a case or something, and he chooses to like really zoom in on them and really isolate them from the rest of the film so it feels very claustrophobic. That's how I would describe this movie for the most part. It feels very claustrophobic, like you're in the, you know, the murder mystery with them. You're trying to solve these clues. For that part, I think it's very genius because if it's not done like that, it could be very boring and take you out of it. But this isn't. You're pretty engaged with the mystery for the most part. The main FBI agent, Lee Harker, is played by Micah Monroe, and I love her and everything, so I'm not going to harp on that too much. But I wanted to draw a little bit of light to who I think is the clear standout in this and steals the show, Nicolas Cage, the weird guy Longlegs. This is just Nicolas Cage in his element. Whenever he finds that role that he fits, he can kind of run away with a film. He does that in this. You know, he's this creepy, eccentric, unsettling, downright terrifying guy at times, almost to a fault because as good as everyone else is, he just kind of dwarfs them when he's not on screen. You just want more Nicolas Cage. It's one of those films. And that really does segue into one of my major gripes with this film, the whole concept of Nicolas Cage, Longlegs, what they got going on there. I just think this movie worked better as a crime thriller than as a scary movie. I mean, it's unsettling at times for sure. I never thought it was scary. My heart rate really never elevated aside from some of the effective jump scares. But as a crime thriller, I was engrossed in the mystery of like what they were trying to solve. I was on board with that. I just don't think it really ever gets there. It's like a scary movie. I mean, it might for some, it didn't for me. And it's kind of hard to explain unless you've seen it, but as much as I like his character and that entire storyline they flesh out, I kind of like this film more before you were introduced to him or that story does play out. Again, it's hard to explain. I'm sure I'll be in the minority with that, but I just thought the story flowed better when it's the crime thriller than when it goes full horror. Like, something was missing. I just felt like the longer this went on and the closer we got to a conclusion, the more plot lines were coming to an end, like the more clumsy and cluttered it got. And you know, as you're following the investigation along, it feels like Zodiac. It's a very like show not tell where you're along with them, you're solving the clues, or at least you think you are. Then the end, it just felt like they had so many ideas. They needed to give you so much of an explanation because the investigation didn't get there. It just became all tell and not show because they knew it would have taken 10 hours for a formal investigation. It just kind of took me out of it. It felt like the vast majority of like, you know, the case we're working on with the main character was just pointless at the end. They just tell you everything in an exposition dump. The way the film gets to its conclusion is so important to talk about because, as I said, I did like this film, but I didn't know how much I liked this film until about the last 15 minutes because it is very vague. It's a mystery like Zodiac or something. You're solving the clues, you want to see where it goes. You can't really know how much you like it until you get a conclusion to the case you're solving in the first place. So when you do get there, I mean, the last 15 minutes of this film I feel like is going to be incredibly polarizing because of how vague the first half of it is. To the point you're going to get there and you're going to either love or hate this movie depending on what you thought of that last 15 minutes. And oddly enough, I'm somewhere in between when it comes to that. Whenever I do reviews on this channel, I am very open and honest about my biases, my likes and dislikes towards certain things. I wanted to love this film. I really did. It was my second most anticipated film of the year. It never got there for me. I never loved it. I like certain things about it, disliked other things. I think it all adds up to a movie you could do worse than, and you definitely have. So yeah, kind of pains me to say that. By no means a terrible movie. Didn't get all the way there. Regardless, have you guys seen Longlegs yet? Did you love it, hate it, somewhere in between like me? Comment down below, let me know. As always, if you haven't subscribed yet, what the hell are you waiting for? I do it all on this channel. I do new releases, scary stuff, tier list rankings, all that. Join me down below in the comments. That's all I got in this video, guys. Peace.